All right, I will let you know when we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this third episode of Orchard Core Pair Programming with Lombiq. And this time our guest is Brasher. She has brought us some quite interesting topic about developing a content warning module. So this is what we'll see today. First, we'll touch a little bit on shortcodes, I believe. We'll see how it goes. And otherwise, we'll do pair programming as usual. If you have any questions, remarks, or anything to share in the chat, please feel free to do that. I will be sure to keep an eye on it and bring anything up to Drew that's interesting. So, Drew, what do we have for today?
Okay. So about a year ago, I had updated my personal website to a blog, an Orchard Core blog, and a lot of other things that I use like Discord and Mastodon have a content warning feature, where if you want to post about a movie spoiler or just any kind of sensitive content that sometimes some people might not want to see, you can hide it with a warning so that they can decide whether they want to see it or not. And so I thought it would be great to have an Orchard Core module for that. And I had started a discussion for it and got some feedback. And then recently, thinking about it more, I ran across a blog post that had some JavaScript and CSS that did pretty much exactly what I was wanting to do. And even in this updated version of Aaron's post, they handled it so that screen readers wouldn't read it also, which is something that I was concerned about. How would it work if someone was using a screen reader? So I'm going to use the JavaScript and CSS from this code pen in the Orchard Core module, and you can kind of see how it should behave here. So like if you have a small piece of content that you want to hide, this is like the inline use, and you can click to reveal it. And for that, I was wanting to use a shortcode in Orchard Core. And then for the block use, you could use a shortcode for a block of text, I think, but also that and the images, I'm wanting to make it a content part that you could add, and that way when you create a content item, you can select whether you want it to have a content warning or not.
Kind of the minimal approach to this would be to have a piece of JavaScript included for your pages, perhaps also a piece of CSS that you are showing there, and just adding that code into the body HTML, right?
Yes.
And this will make it easier for non-technical users with the shortcode then.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to start with adding a shortcode. And if we look at the documentation for shortcodes, you can see that you can define a shortcode in code a couple of different ways. I'm going to go with creating a shortcode provider so that in the provider, I can reference the JavaScript and CSS.
And sorry, what would be the other approach or the other approaches, and why are you not doing that?
So it looks like here you can just define the whole shortcode, like right here in the startup. and this would return the content. The reason I was thinking of not using it this way is because I need to include the Java CSS and JavaScript, and I wasn't sure that I could do that here. I knew that in the shortcode provider class, I could inject it as a resource, inject the CSS and JavaScript as a resource.
Oh yeah, so this would be a very, very, very lightweight way of doing shortcodes.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to create a class that implements the iShortcode provider.
Okay, so you have a web project and a basic module skeleton already here.
Yes, I just created the module using the Visual Studio templates, and I did not check the box to create the content part files, although I might need that later, but I didn't want to start with it. Just I wanted to start with like the minimum.
Yeah, I think that's good.
And for the iShortcode provider, I need to add a reference to the shortcode abstractions.
Isn't this something, by the way, that IntelliSense would suggest you? So you don't necessarily need to know that the package you need is that one.
Maybe I could take it out and see.
Okay, that NuGet search is pretty advanced nowadays. Yeah, I think from the quick access menu or whatever it is called, it should be there. No, it doesn't know about it. So we are on the latest and greatest 1.8.3 version, I see.
Yes. And now that I have that, it should now. And then I'm just going to implement the interface. Okay. And I'll come back to finish this. But first, I'm going to go ahead and add, go ahead and register the shortcode provider and describe the shortcode. So I'm just going to copy this out of the documentation.
Oh yeah, it's probably always good to start with the dependency registration, otherwise you'll forget it and never know why it doesn't work.
See here.
It's interesting though that when you register shortcode, you have to specify all of this metadata as opposed to that coming from the shortcode provider itself. Yes, it's an interesting API. I don't believe there are many such registrations in Orchid Core. It's usually the hint and usage will be part of the interface for like workflow tasks.
Okay. So I had thought about calling it just CW to make it short, but it might be better to go with just content warning so that it's more descriptive. I don't know. I'll go with content warning.
Yeah, probably that's safer. It would be nice to have actually aliases for the shortcodes. I'll probably open an issue about that.
Right. So and this is where you put the default value. So when you insert the source, when you add a shortcode from the kind of the UI of and the Orchard admin, this is what will populate. And I want to pass in a parameter that is the warning message. Okay, and that hint will just show up so that people know what the shortcode is for, and then you can give a usage example. I'm going to keep this one simple for now, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I think that is good. Just I think I missed
brackets.
Okay.
And also round brackets, I believe there.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
By the way, shortcodes, I would mistake shortcodes don't need aliases because you can just make your shortcode provider listen to any string. So you can implement it to listen both to content underscore warning and just to CW.
You said that there is a way to do that?
Yeah, that's actually what the image shortcode provider does as well. We'll be able to see. But before that, there's a compilation warning or error. Oh yeah, you are missing an angle brackets as well. So just before the round brackets. And also a semicolon after categories.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
It's a bit confusing. A method call with delegates and whatnot.
Yeah. Okay, so now I need to change this to content warning, that, and I'm gonna, I don't know if this needs to be under media. I don't think this needs to be under media for the shortcode, to just content, I think.
Yeah, that's something you can always change later.
Okay, so I think now I need to go back here and actually implement this. So I want to use the warning message that gets passed in. Oops. I think since right now, since I only have one, I know in the image it uses default or named, to where you can either name the argument or you can just pass it in with no name. But I think for this one, since it will only have one argument, there may not be a need for the name.
But do you see that identifier there? So that's where you need to match for content underscore warning, and that's where you can also add just CV as well. CW.
Oh, okay.
By the way, I always like to keep the Orchid Core full source code open as a reference, and I'm so insightful because I'm looking at the image shortcode provider.
Okay.
But it does that with image and media.
Okay, so this is where you could add to use CW as well.
Yeah. Just the important part here is that if you scroll down, that you are not really registering a provider for a shortcode. You are registering a provider with some name and description, but which shortcode it actually handles is decided here.
Okay.
So I would suggest something similar, perhaps. Yeah, this probably looks the pattern that's useful here as well. But by the way, all of these statics, so you don't really need these static fields for the code to work, but you can reuse a number of allocations if you save these frequently used, if it's frequently used, but you can save these frequently used objects into statics like this, and then it's just a single allocation.
Okay. Okay, so then, if I didn't leave, so if I didn't have this checking the identifier, would this just run for any shortcode that kind of confused as to why what the identifier is when it's also registered in the startup, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's what you see in the startup registration is more like metadata for display. You are not really registering the provider for a given shortcode. I think this needs to be a string. As you know that that uppercase null is just a
I see. Yeah.
A value task.
Okay. So now I need, what I want to do is wrap the content in an element that has an attribute that I can use, that the JavaScript can use. So I'm going to do
As we'll have a special span with a class or a data content actually. Okay.
And we may change it in the future to be a class or something instead. The JavaScript that I'm using is set up to actually use an element or an attribute called content warning. But this, if I understand the purpose of this post, was as kind of a proof of concept of how browsers could handle content warning natively. And so I think that's why they used an attribute just called content warning. But to keep it valid HTML, I was going to do data content warning instead.
Okay. And why do you need that, by the way, instead of something like a class? So you can have multiple types of content warnings?
Exactly sure why.
Yeah, I believe that that blog post also explains that you can have something like a spoiler or a trigger warning. There are multiple kinds. So it actually can display a specific message about the content that you can then reveal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's one reason I think for the attribute instead of so with the attribute you put the actual warning that you want people to see inside the attribute, as opposed to if you had a class to select on, it would just be that class, the name of the class. So I think that is why that attribute was used. So.
Okay, well, it shouldn't matter too much. I was just wondering because having a class is a simple, standard, fast, whatnot. But in effect, it should be the same.
And I could change it later if we need to. Oops. Okay. So the JavaScript, it takes the value that's inside the attribute and it actually displays it instead of the content until you click. So that. Oops. So that should wrap the content in a span with the attribute of content warning that contains your message. And then we just need to return a new value task string.
Yeah. By the way, the value task is I believe new .NET 8 or .NET 7 perhaps type. As a relatively new. Pretty much in this case, it's useful if you want to have an async API like this evaluate async, but you don't really want to have an overhead of the async code or a full task for those cases where it's actually synchronous code. And you evade that most of the, or you expect that most of the code here would be synchronous, just as yours. So this is a good API choice.
Okay. And actually, I don't think I actually needed this that I copied in from the other. I'm just going to take that out.
Perhaps it would be a good idea to run it and let's see what we got, even though it won't really do anything yet.
Right. Okay.
Isn't this, by the way, how you usually do, or what's your usual approach? Because what I do is that I write a little bit of code, try it out, write a little bit of code, try it out, so, like incrementally with very small steps.
Yes, that was, yeah, this was about where I was going to try to get to before I tried to run it. So, and I'll just use the, I can just use, the browser inspect to see if it's actually putting it there.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and see if I could use this in this blog post that's already there. So here's the short codes, and there's the content warning short code with the hint and the usage that I defined in the startup. So I'll add that. And you could use it for something like and then, and here is where you would put something so that the user knows like why it's hidden so they can decide. So like you could put, if it was a spoiler, you could put
So the idea is that what will be displayed instead of the content will be that message, right?
right.
Okay, so then you don't really need multiple types of content warnings, of course.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and publish this. Yeah. And so I see that it did put the span, but it didn't add the attribute. And that is because, go back to, by default, well, I think it's by default, at least on the blog recipe, that the body part is set to sanitize the HTML.
And I believe that somebody quite recently opened an issue or a discussion about that, or yeah. So
yes. So
oh no, it
this
was
right
it was
here.
you.
So I'm gonna just uncheck that for now. And now let's see if we've got it.
Probably should do something about it because I understand where this is coming from, but probably it's not a good idea to sanitize shortcode outputs as well.
So now we see that now does have the content warning. I'm not actually sure where.
That probably looks like a mismatch of the types of the arguments. No.
See what that.
So because
Let's see here. Just move that out of the way. Oh, that's what. So maybe this needs to be.
I'm actually not sure about that, but there's. I think that should just work. But how the image shortcut provider does is that that I'm not sure whether you would need that or there's the named method as well. That just returns a string.
Maybe I'll just use that. Let's try that. Okay, yeah, that got it. Okay, so that's got it in there. So now I think if I include the CSS and JavaScript, that it should work like the example in this code pen. So.
Oh yeah. How you will do that? What's the plan there?
So I'm going to look at the resources documentation. So here's a section on registering a resource. So I think I need to create a class like this, resource management options configuration, and then I can define the JavaScript and CSS in there. And then inside the shortcode provider, I can inject the resource manager and use it like this so that anytime the shortcode is used, it will include that JavaScript and CSS.
I think you can do this a little bit easier.
Okay.
You only need such a resource manifest by registering. Yeah, you don't necessarily need this. You only need this if you want to inject style sheet or a script by its name, which is mostly needed if you reuse it. Like you have the jQuery module and you want to reference the jQuery itself from multiple modules by name. But you don't really need that if you just want to use that script once. You can just reference it by URL. So much like how the set URL is working here. So you don't need this class here.
Okay.
You can just inject the CSS and the script with the resource manager. And by the way, for that you will need not the register because that's when, or actually. There should be an include or how is it called? Maybe it's register. This has been a very long time since I included resources like this.
One thing I was wondering about with the named, if it needed to be a named resource, would be if you use the shortcode twice on the same post, would that include it? Would that include the JavaScript twice if you didn't use a named resource?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't think it should if the URL is the same thing. But yeah, somehow you should be able to just inject that resource once.
Oops. Maybe I can.
Yeah, it's actually in the register. It's called main register. It's just the method is register URL. I didn't remember that.
Okay. So you say I just need to inject the resource manager and then register the URL. That okay.
Yeah, that's actually what those tech helpers, the script and style sheet tech helpers also do, and that should just work. But we should indeed test whether two shortcodes include scripts and styles twice. I think it shouldn't, but worth checking.
Let's add create some JavaScript and CSS files.
Do you usually use something to build CSS and JavaScript, by the way?
I haven't used something to build it much. I've used some other I'm a little bit familiar with some of the other stuff to build, like Gulp and stuff, but I haven't really set that up before.
It's not important for small scripts and style sheets like this, of course, but just curious.
And then I'm going to get
That will be all the CSS, by the way.
That is all the CSS that. Well, there was a little bit of CSS in here that I don't think has anything to do with the actual. I think this is just for the demo, because the way this works is it extracts the content out of the DOM into a shadow DOM, I think. So that's how it hides it from the screen readers.
Okay, so okay, so it's mostly JavaScript then. I thought that it will be mostly CSS and JavaScript will just flip the state. But okay, so it's of course, because screen reader should be thought about too. Okay.
And then I need to replace some of these with. Oops. Okay, I'm going to leave those because it's actually creating an element there instead of accessing the attribute. I'm just going to do that so for right now and see if it works. But okay, so I need to go register the.
By the way, our Visual Studio extension that you also asked about in Discord, I believe, has a shortcut for adding a dependency injection like this.
Oh, okay. Was that in the snippets or?
It's not a snippet. It's part of the extension. It's by default. It's Control I believe. Do you have it installed?
Yes.
Then you can also look under Tools. Probably you don't have it bound to anything. Tools and Inject Dependency. So like this.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And yeah, it also knows about a lot of dependencies. I believe if you just start writing iResource, then it will. No, it doesn't know about iResource Manager. So you would type just iResource Manager in here, hit enter, and everything else is generated.
Oh, okay. Nice. I was thinking that with this, I didn't need to add the property because I think I would just use it in the constructor and it wouldn't be used anymore. Does that seem right to you? Like I could just register it here? Like
It's you know when that's not really recommended because you shouldn't really do any work in the constructor of an injected dependency because it can be instantiated anytime and any number of times, but rather in that evaluate async. So it's only included, that script and CSS is only included if the shortcode is actually being used.
okay, I'll have to go ahead and use this then. All right. So would I register it here in the evaluate async method?
Yeah, that's where I would do it, yes.
Okay.
Yep, register URL, and then you need either script or style sheet, I believe. Yeah, the type, and then the relative virtual path within your module.
I just realized I misnamed this.
I believe you also need to add the module name in front of that. The full module project name / content-warning.js.
Oh, okay. So I guess this would be the full name.
Yep, and also there's a question from the audience. Before we go any further, I would ask you that. So in the JavaScript, you can also answer that you didn't write the JavaScript, so we should ask the other. In the JavaScript, there should be a create HTML element somewhere that's creating a new element.
Oh, actually, I'll just look. It would be
Official.
better to look here.
Yeah.
Yes, here it creates. Let's see. It creates an element here.
Yeah, so the question was, why are we creating a custom element here? Why do we need that custom content warning element? Why not just, I suppose, like a div span, Brasher span?
I'm not exactly sure. I'm wondering, like, from reading the blog, like the blog post and some of the related links in there, it seems like they were doing this as a proof of concept for a thing, an issue that, or like a request on the GitHub for the web we want, which tries to get browsers to implement new features. And so I think this was kind of a proof of concept of how the browsers could natively implement handling content warning. So I don't know if that is why they used a new type of element. So for this, it may be better to just use something else, just like use a div or something.
Oh, I see. So probably this can be a bit simpler, but we don't need to worry about that. We can just continue using it and see how it works.
So the resource path debug.
You know about the resource debug configuration?
No, I don't.
It's just that the included resources can be configured in two ways. It can be debug mode and probably release, and you can specify two different URLs. So when you are developing, you can use like an unminified version of the script, and when it's out in production, it uses a minified version of the script. But I believe you can also specify just one, and that will be used every time because you don't actually need that differently, I think.
It was giving me an error.
Okay, then probably
you
need to specify both.
You
need to specify the same thing for both. Yeah.
Okay. And then I need to do the same thing for the CSS. Okay. And I guess I will run it and see if that works.
Yeah. So let's see.
Well, it did something.
Okay. Yeah. It's promising. Oh, wow. It's okay.
Let's see. I wonder if
isn't this just the colors? So what happens if you highlight it?
It doesn't, like, I can't click on it or.
Okay.
Let's see. Let me make sure that the JavaScript doesn't look like the JavaScript got included. So the CSS got included, the JavaScript didn't. Do you think maybe it?
Probably it's worth specifying whether you want it as a head or a foot script.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm not sure. Is that right?
You don't really need, by the way, that for the style sheets. That's always a head.
Oh, okay. Okay, I think that was it. That was what the issue was. So now my warning is bigger than my content, so it's kind of messed up a little, but it is actually working. But so I think for now I'm going to just go into the JavaScript and kind of make the warning a little smaller, because that's probably need to come up with some way of making it it's probably with a better way of making it stretch to fit the warning if the actual content is smaller than the warning. But there we go.
Oh yeah, that did the trick. This actually works. Awesome. This is all, and we are quite at the end of the stream as well, so this is probably the perfect time to conclude. So great job, Drew. We reached the end point that perhaps was planned for today, right?
Yes. The next thing I was thinking of doing will be to add a content part so that you could, like if you added it to your blog post content type, it would add like a toggle where you could toggle on or off the content warning and add a message there. So like the whole blog post could have a warning over it. But that's probably the next step that I wanted to do.
This will be probably relieving, because then you can just freely write all the spoilers you want. You don't need to care about the readers.
Yeah. One other thing I thought of.
Yep, sorry.
One other thing I thought about for the future maybe is to have like a site setting that a person could somehow set to where, like, if they don't want any warnings to show on anything on your site, they could do that. Like Mastodon, the Mastodon platform has something like that, where you can just, in your settings, you can say, I don't want to see, just show me all content no matter what the warning is, or like if the warning is this, go ahead and show it to me. So
wouldn't that be better as a user setting?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, but some way for them to set that setting, but I'm not really sure how I would. Yeah, I feel like that one would be kind of down the road. Maybe then the next step would be the content part.
Yeah, so probably having user settings is a bit fancy for now. Probably you don't need that, but this is awesome, and the content part would be quite useful. Yeah. is probably also releasing this as an open source module. So you said that probably you are open for that, right?
Yes, and I actually have the project. Did I put a link to it here? I put it. Put the link here. So this is the GitHub, where right now all it is just that basic the default template, like once I created it from the template in Visual Studio. So I'll commit these changes that I made today, and but this will be where the project will be.
Awesome. And probably you will be able to publish it on NuGet as well, so you can easily include it in any project.
Yes.
Awesome. The people in the audience also asked for the repo and the source. So I sent the link. As you said, you will push the today's updates to it shortly. And yeah, we'll probably be able to include it in the .NET selection of modules as well, because well, it's all about content, and content warning can be quite useful. I would also use it in my personal blog that I'm hosting on .NET. So I think it's a good time to conclude. Would you actually like to continue with the content part development next week?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Then that's what we'll continue with. We also have other sessions lined up. So Drew will be able to join us next week with the content part development. Then a week later, perhaps Hisham with something else. We'll see. And otherwise, if you would like to join as a guest, we would be really happy to have you. As you have seen, it's more or less a pair programming as usual, a little bit more interactive perhaps. And there's also an audience. So you can take a look over our shoulders and have a sneak peek of what we do in the shadows of our offices with just Visual Studio. It's your turn to look a little bit into how others work. So thank you, Drew. Then awesome. See you next week as well, and thank you everyone for joining in, and see you next week too.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.